The wind howled like a grieving widow, tearing through the pines as if to warn Elias Kane of the peril awaiting him. He stumbled through the snow-dusted forest, his boots crunching against the frozen earth, each step a battle against the cold that gnawed at his bones. A single thought anchored him: find shelter or die. Elias was no stranger to hardship. At 32, he'd seen enough of the world's cruelty to know survival demanded more than strength, it required will. His journey through the Blackthorn wilderness wasn't born of adventure, but desperation. His sister, Mara, lay dying in a village 3 days' ride south, her only hope a rare herb said to grow in these cursed woods. Elias carried no map, only rumors whispered by traders and a heart heavy with guilt for the years he'd left Mara to fend for herself. The forest seemed to conspire against him. Trees loomed like sentinels, their branches clawing at his tattered cloak. His lantern had flickered out hours ago, and the moon hid behind a shroud of clouds. Just as despair began to tighten its grip, a faint glow pierced the darkness of fire, crackling in the distance. Elias's heart leapt. Fire meant life. He pushed forward, the promise of warmth pulling him like a lifeline. As he neared, the silhouette of a man came into view, seated by a small campfire. The old man's face was a map of wrinkles, his eyes glinting like polished stones under the firelight. His hands, gnarled as the roots beneath him, cradled a pipe carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer in the glow. Elias hesitated. Strangers in these woods were rarely kind. Cold night for wandering, the old man said, his voice low and gravelly, like stones shifting in a riverbed. He didn't look up from the fire, but his words carried an invitation. Elias stepped closer, wary but desperate. I'm looking for the starbloom herb, Elias said, his breath clouding in the frigid air. For my sister. She's sick. The old man nodded, as if he'd heard the story 1,000 times. Sit, he said, gesturing to a log across the fire. Warm your bones. The woods don't give up their secrets to those who rush. Elias obeyed, the heat of the fire seeping into his aching limbs. The old man puffed on his pipe, sending curls of smoke spiraling into the night. The scent was strange earthy, with a hint of something sweet, like forgotten summers. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the fire's crackle and the distant howl of the wind. What's your name, traveler? The old man asked, finally meeting Elias's gaze. His eyes held a depth that made Elias feel exposed, as if the man could see the weight of his regrets. Elias Kane, he answered. And you? The old man chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Names don't mean much out here, but you can call me Amos. He tapped the pipe against his palm, studying Elias. You're chasing a ghost, boy. Starbloom's rare as hope in these parts. What makes you think you'll find it? Elias clenched his fists, the question cutting deeper than the cold. I have to. Mara's all I've got left. Amos nodded, his expression unreadable. He reached into his cloak and pulled out the pipe, holding it out to Elias. Take this, he said. It belonged to my grandfather. Smoked it every night by a fire like this. Said it cleared his mind, showed him paths he couldn't see. Elias stared at the pipe, its carvings catching the firelight like tiny constellations. Why give it to me? He asked, suspicion tightening his chest. Amos's smile was faint, almost sad. Because you look like a man who's lost his way. Maybe this'll help you find it. Reluctantly, Elias took the pipe. It was heavier than it looked, warm from Amos's hands. He turned it over, tracing the carving spirals and symbols he didn't recognize. I don't smoke, he said, unsure why he felt compelled to explain. Don't need to, Amos replied. Just hold it. Listen to it. Things got a way of speaking if you know how to hear. Elias frowned, but tucked the pipe into his pack. The gesture felt like a pact, though he couldn't say why. Amos leaned back, his gaze drifting to the stars. Rest here tonight, he said. Tomorrow, head north to the hollow. That's where your starbloom grows if it grows at all. Elias wanted to press for more, but exhaustion dulled his senses. He nodded, curling up by the fire, the pipe's weight a strange comfort against his side. As he drifted into uneasy sleep, Amos's voice echoed in his mind. Things got a way of speaking. The next morning, Amos was gone. The fire was cold, the logs reduced to ash. Elias searched for tracks, but found none, as if the old man had vanished into the air. Only the pipe remained, proof the encounter wasn't a dream. He set out north, the forest growing denser with each step. The pipe seemed to hum in his pack, a faint vibration he couldn't explain. By midday, he reached a clearing where a woman stood, her back to him. She was young, no older than Mara, with hair like spun copper and a bow slung across her shoulder. She turned, her eyes sharp and wary. "Who are you?" she demanded, her hand resting on a dagger at her belt. "Elias Kane," he said, raising his hands. "I'm just passing through, looking for Starbloom." Her expression softened, but only slightly. "You're in the wrong place, Elias Kane. Starbloom doesn't grow here. Not anymore." She stepped closer, her gaze flicking to his pack. "Where'd you get that pipe?" Elias's stomach twisted. "An old man gave it to me. Amos. By a fire last night." The woman's face paled. "Amos," she whispered. "That's not possible. Amos has been dead for 10 years. Elias's heart thudded in his chest, the woman's words ringing in his ears. Dead for 10 years. He gripped the pipe in his pack, its carvings pressing into his palm like a warning. The woman, who introduced herself as Lila, stared at him with a mix of disbelief and fear, her copper hair catching the weak sunlight filtering through the trees. "Amos was my father," Lila said, her voice tight. "He used to sit by a fire every night, smoking that pipe. Said it was his grandfather's, passed down to keep the family's stories alive." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "So how do you have it?" Elias recounted the previous night, the fire, the old man's cryptic words, the gift of the pipe. Lila listened, her expression shifting from suspicion to something softer, almost mournful. When he finished, she shook her head. "That pipe was buried with him. I saw it myself." The words sent a chill down Elias's spine, colder than the blackthorn wind. He wanted to dismiss it as coincidence, a trick of his exhausted mind, but the pipe's weight in his hand felt too real, too deliberate. "I don't understand," he said. "He was there. He spoke to me." Lila's gaze softened, but her voice held an edge. "This forest plays tricks. Always has. But that pipe, it's no ordinary thing. My father said it carried memories, stories from those who smoked it. Maybe it's trying to tell you something." Elias frowned, his thumb tracing the pipe's carvings. "Like what?" Lila shrugged, but her eyes lingered on the pipe. "That's for you to find out. But if you're looking for Starbloom, you're chasing a ghost. The hollow's been barren for years. Something poisoned the soil, nobody knows what." Elias's hope flickered, but he refused to let it die. "Amos told me to go to the hollow. He said the Starbloom's there." Lila's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then you're on a fool's errand. But I'll take you there. Not because I believe you, but because I want to know why you have my father's pipe." They set off together, an uneasy alliance born of necessity. Lila moved through the forest with the grace of someone born to it, her steps silent, her eyes scanning for danger. Elias struggled to keep pace, his body aching from the cold and lack of sleep. The pipe seemed to grow heavier with each step, its hum more pronounced, like a heartbeat pulsing through the wood. As they trekked north, Lila shared fragments of her story. She'd grown up in these woods, raised by Amos after her mother died in childbirth. He'd taught her to hunt, to track, to survive. But when he died, she'd left the forest, unable to bear its memories. "I only came back to hunt," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Didn't expect to find my father's ghost." Elias wanted to comfort her, but his own grief kept him silent. He thought of Mara, her frail body wasting away, her laughter a distant memory. He'd abandoned her years ago, chasing dreams of wealth in distant cities, only to return when it was almost too late. The guilt was a blade in his chest, sharper than the wind. By dusk, they reached the hollow of vast, desolate basin where the trees grew sparse and twisted, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The air felt wrong, heavy with an unnatural stillness. Lila stopped at the edge, her hand on her dagger. "This is it," she said. "But don't expect miracles." Elias scanned the barren ground, his heart sinking. No flowers, no herbs, just cracked earth and dead roots. He knelt, digging through the soil, desperate for a sign of the Starbloom's delicate silver petals. Nothing. Lila watched him, her expression unreadable. "Told you," she said. "Whatever grew here is long gone." Elias's hands trembled as he clutched the pipe. "Then why did he send me here?" he muttered, more to himself than to her. He pulled the pipe from his pack, its carvings glowing faintly in the fading light. On impulse, he brought it to his lips, not to smoke, but to feel its warmth, its presence. And then he saw it. A vision, sharp and vivid, flooded his mind. A man Amos, younger, stronger, knelt in this very hollow, planting a single starbloom seed. His hands worked the soil with care, his face etched with determination. The image shifted, showing the same man years later, older now, watching as the plant withered, poisoned by some unseen force. Amos's voice echoed. The forest keeps its secrets, but it also keeps its promises. Elias gasped, dropping the pipe. Lila rushed to his side, her eyes wide. What happened? I saw him, Elias said, his voice shaking. Amos. He planted the starbloom here. It's not go nights hidden. Lila stared at him, then at the pipe. Hidden where? Elias didn't know, but the vision felt like a map, a clue he couldn't ignore. He stood, determination burning through his despair. We keep looking, he said. There's something here. I know it. Lila hesitated, then nodded. All right, but we do this my way. The hollow's dangerous at night. As they ventured deeper into the basin, the air grew colder, the silence heavier. Elias clutched the pipe, its hum guiding him like a compass. Whatever Amos had given him, it wasn't just a pipe, it was a key. To what, he didn't know. But for Mara's sake, he'd find out. The hollow swallowed the last of the daylight, leaving Elias and Lila in a world of shadows. The pipe's hum had grown insistent, a pulse that seemed to sync with Elias's heartbeat. He followed its pull, his boots sinking into the cracked earth, while Lila scanned the darkness, her bow at the ready. Something's wrong here, Lila whispered, her voice taut. The animals don't come to the hollow. Not even the wolves. Elias barely heard her, his focus on the pipe. Another vision flickered in his mind, Amos again, standing in this same basin, his face grim as he poured a vial of dark liquid into the soil. The starbloom withered before his eyes, its silver petals curling into ash. The image burned with betrayal, as if the forest itself had turned against him. Elias! Lila's shout snapped him back. She grabbed his arm, pointing to a faint glow in the distancia, soft, silver light pulsing beneath a gnarled tree. What is that? They approached cautiously, the light growing brighter with each step. At the tree's base, hidden beneath a tangle of roots, was a single starbloom, its petals shimmering like moonlight. Elias's breath caught. It's real, he whispered, dropping to his knees. Lila crouched beside him, her expression torn between awe and unease. How did you know? I didn't, Elias said, his fingers hovering over the flower. The pipet showed me. Before Lila could respond, a low growl rumbled through the hollow. Elias froze, his hand on the starbloom. From the shadows emerged a figure, not a beast, but a man, cloaked in black, his face obscured by a hood. He carried a staff topped with a glowing crystal, its light casting eerie patterns across the ground. You shouldn't be here, the man said, his voice cold as the wind. That flower belongs to the forest. Lila knocked an arrow, her stance unwavering. And who are you to decide that? The man tilted his head, as if amused. I am the keeper. This hollow is under my protection. The starbloom is not for outsiders. Elias stood, clutching the pipe. My sister's dying. I need that flower. The keeper's eyes glinted beneath his hood. Many have come for it. None have left with it. The forest demands a price. Elias's grip tightened on the pipe, its hum now a roar in his mind. Another vision struck Amos facing this same keeper, years ago, pleading for the starbloom to save his wife. The keeper had refused, and Amos had poisoned the soil in defiance, ensuring no one else could claim it. The act had cost him everything: his home, his peace, his life. You knew Amos, Elias said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. He tried to save someone he loved. You stopped him. The keeper's posture stiffened. Amos was a fool. He thought he could defy the forest's will. You hold his pipito, you think you're any different. Lila lowered her bow slightly, her eyes flicking to Elias. What's he talking about? Elias didn't answer. The pipe's visions were clear now: Amos's anger, his grief, his sacrifice. The starbloom wasn't just a plant. It was a symbol of the forest's power, guarded by the keeper and bound by rules Elias didn't understand. But he understood loss. He understood Mara. I'll pay the price, Elias said, stepping forward. Whatever it takes. The keeper laughed, a hollow sound. Brave words. But the price is your memory. Take the star bloom, and you'll forget why you came for it. You'll forget your sister." Elias's heart stopped. Mara's face flashed in his mind, her smile, her voice, the years he'd wasted. To lose her memory was to lose himself. But to leave without the star bloom was to let her die. Lila grabbed his arm. "Elias, don't. There's another way." "There isn't," he said, his voice breaking. "I've failed her too many times." Before Lila could protest, Elias reached for the star bloom. The keeper raised his staff, and the ground trembled, roots bursting from the earth like serpents. Lila fired an arrow, but it shattered against an invisible barrier. Elias's hand closed around the flower, its petals soft and warm. The world spun, and darkness swallowed him. When he woke, Lila was shaking him, her face pale. The star bloom was in his hand, its glow fading. The keeper was gone. "What happened?" Lila asked, her voice urgent. "Did you see him?" Elias nodded, but his mind was foggy, like a dream slipping away. He looked at the star bloom, then at Lila. Who's Mara?" Lila's eyes widened, horror dawning. "Your sister. You said she was dying." Elias's chest tightened, but the name meant nothing. He clutched the star bloom, its purpose a blank space in his heart. The pipe hummed softly, as if mourning what he'd lost. "We need to go," Lila said, pulling him to his feet. "The keeper might come back." Elias followed, numb and silent, the star bloom a weight he didn't understand. The forest seemed to watch, its secrets deeper than ever. Elias trudged through the forest, the star bloom tucked safely in his pack, its faint glow a beacon in the darkness. Lila led the way, her steps purposeful but heavy with worry. She glanced back at him often, her eyes searching for the man she'd met only hours ago, the one who'd spoken of his sister with such fierce love. Now, Elias's face was a mask of confusion, his gaze distant, as if the forest had stolen more than his memory. "We'll get to the village by dawn," Lila said, breaking the silence. "The healer there can use the star bloom. Maybe it'll help you remember." Elias nodded, but the gesture was hollow. The name Mara was a ghost, slipping through his grasp each time he tried to hold it. The pipe, still in his hand, hummed softly, its carvings warm against his skin. He wanted to throw it away, to rid himself of its weight, but something stopped him, a whisper of instinct, or perhaps Amos's voice, urging him to listen. As they climbed a ridge, the forest thinned, revealing a sky ablaze with stars. Lila paused, her breath catching. "Look," she said, pointing to a faint trail of smoke rising in the distance. "That's the village. We're close." Elias stared at the smoke, a flicker of emotion stirring in his chest. Not memory, but purpose. He didn't know who the star bloom was for, but he knew it mattered. "Let's keep moving," he said, his voice stronger than he felt. They descended the ridge, the terrain growing softer, the air warmer. But as they neared the village, a new vision gripped Elias. The pipe pulsed, and he saw Amos again, not in the hollow, but in a small cabin, carving the pipe by candlelight. A woman lay in a bed nearby, her face pale, her breathing shallow. Amos's hands trembled as he worked, his whispers a prayer for her survival. The vision faded, leaving Elias gasping. "What is it?" Lila asked, her hand on his shoulder. "Amos," Elias said. "He made this pipe for someone he loved. He lost her, just like..." He trailed off, the blank space where Mara's name should have been aching like a wound. Lila's eyes softened. "My mother," she said quietly. "That's who he lost. The star bloom could have saved her, but the keeper wouldn't allow it. That's why he poisoned the hollow. He wanted to punish the forest." Elias looked at the pipe, its carvings now familiar, like a story he'd always known. "He's still here," he said. "In this pipe, guiding us." Lila didn't respond, but her silence was agreement. They pressed on, reaching the village as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. The healer, an old woman with hands as steady as stone, took the star bloom without question. "This'll save her," she said, her eyes flicking to Elias. "Your sister's strong. She's been waiting for you." Elias's heart clenched, but the words felt foreign. He followed the healer to a small hut, where a young woman lay on a cot, her face gaunt but alive. Her eyes, a mirror of his own, lit up when she saw him. "Elias," she whispered, her voice weak but warm. "You came back." He knelt beside her, searching for a spark of recognition. Nothing. Yet her smile stirred something deep, a love he couldn't name, but felt in his bones. "I brought this," he said, holding out the star bloom. "For you." The healer worked quickly, grinding the petals into a paste and mixing it with herbs. As she administered the medicine, Elias sat by the woman Mara holding her hand. The pipe rested in his lap, its hum softer now, like a lullaby. Days passed. Mara grew stronger, her color returning, her laughter filling the hut. Elias stayed by her side, piecing together their shared past through her stories. She spoke of their childhood, their fights, their dreams. Each word was a thread, weaving a tapestry of a life he'd lost. The pipe remained silent, its visions gone, as if its purpose had been fulfilled. One night, as Mara slept, Elias sat by a fire outside the hut. Lila joined him, her bow resting against her shoulder. "You did it," she said. "You saved her." Elias stared into the flames, the pipe in his hands. "I don't know her," he admitted, "but I feel her, like she's part of me." Lila nodded, her gaze distant. "That's enough. It has to be." He held the pipe to the firelight, its carvings catching the glow. "What do I do with this?" he asked. "Keep it," Lila said. "It's yours now. Maybe it'll tell you more stories when you're ready." Elias smiled, a small, weary thing. The forest had taken his memories, but it had given him something else, a chance to start again, to be the brother Mara needed. The pipe, Amos's legacy, was a reminder that even in loss, there was purpose. As the fire crackled, Elias felt a spark of hope. The forest's secrets were vast, but so was its mercy. He'd find his way, one step at a time.